A couple of years ago, I did a piece that expressed skepticism about the future of the Chinese economic model. You might not believe this, but it's really annoying to be right all the time. The slow motion collapse of the Chinese economic model continues unabated and is actually accelerating. Up until a couple of years ago, I rarely got involved in political discussions with just about anybody. But since I've started making these videos, that's changed, obviously. And now, from time to time, I'll run across the occasional socialist who points to the Chinese economic model as proof that socialism works. At which point, I sometimes feel obliged to point out that the Chinese economy, over the past 40 years, has started working directly in proportion to the number of capitalist policies it's implemented. And the answer is always something like, well, yeah, but they're socialists, or something like that. Well, now it's official. Chinese leaders are starting to turn their backs on the economic approach that lifted them out of poverty and brought prosperity to an entire generation of Chinese people. There seem to be two primary reasons for this. Number one, not surprisingly, the people currently in power want to stay in power, and they see this as the best way to make that happen. One of the primary rules in the dictator's playbook is never run out of external enemies who are trying to destroy you. That's a tough argument to make when your real, if not stated goal, is to become more and more like them. Reason number two is that, incredibly, some socialists seem to feel that the only way to make socialism work is through capitalism. No, you did not hear that wrong. The idea is to develop an economic engine fueled by individual choice, free trade, and innovation. And once that engine is developed, switch your fuel over to something like pure ethanol with the thought that the engine will run just as well. The level of delusion necessary in order to believe this is really quite extraordinary. People in general, not just the Chinese, have a very difficult time grasping the fact that if your goal is to create a successful human society, inequality is not a necessary evil. It is a key and desirable element that is required in order to reach your goal. We very quickly forget that the richest countries in the world have the richest poor people in the world. And we instead focus on the fact that not everyone is rich. When we adopt this kind of approach, we're ensuring that there will be more poverty, higher infant mortality, and shorter lifespans. And we're accepting, without ever actually admitting it, that this is fine as long as there are fewer rich people. In the final irony, attempts to reduce inequality often end up creating even more of it. All that is accomplished is to change the nature of the rich from those who are the most successful at making money in the private economy to those who are the most successful at spending it in government. Now, which system would you say is more likely to run out of money first? In socialist societies, it's common for there to be a certain amount of forced nostalgia for the good old days when the communists were fully in charge, and never mind the tens of millions that these policies killed. This kind of nostalgia is necessary in order for the masses to believe that the gains they made with more economic freedom happened because of their past and present leaders, not in spite of them. Ideas and images once used in China only to keep the nostalgia train running are now making their way into popular Chinese culture as the current president appears in his Chairman Mao suit and sings nearly forgotten songs calling for a working class war against capitalists. Americans, let me ask you something. How would you feel if our current president showed up in a getup like this? Or people of France, how about this one? Why is it so ridiculous in the West, but not in China? It's because the West, despite having lost its way on the importance of individual liberty, is primarily made up of governments based on laws and not men. The government of China has always been a government of men, not laws. Hence, the current shift designed to largely keep the current men in power. For a few shining decades, the Chinese had a leader who generally saw the wisdom of a free China and seemed to have little interest in cultivating a cult of personality like those who came before and after. But the days of Chinese leaders realizing that the pursuit of wealth is good and healthy are rapidly coming to a close, to be replaced by the same old tired class warfare that has an unsurprising and unblemished record of failure. What a shame. Especially since the Chinese people are the real losers in this whole fiasco. It's amazing how long a totalitarian regime can hang on through the years, even decades, of failure. As the Chinese ship sinks and it becomes more and more desperate to stay afloat, the world is likely to become a more dangerous place. China, once a nation and a people who saw nothing but blue skies and calm seas, is purposely reversing course and plowing headlong into the same storm that it once so successfully escaped.